Watch till end. My alien roommate's mating season started early. Now I can't sleep at night. Evan Hale had always liked quiet places. He liked the calm hum of computers, the soft glow of the station's lights, and the gentle routine of everyday life. After years of working on interstellar repair missions, he finally felt ready to settle down in one place, even if that place was a high-tech apartment on the orbital station Aurora Prime. The station itself was a marvel. Towers of glass and metal reached into the endless dark of space. Ships from dozens of species came and went, leaving trails of color in the void. Aurora Prime was a hub for trade, research, and cultural exchange. Humans, though still a minority, were welcomed here for their adaptability and problem-solving skills. Evan's apartment was small but comfortable, overlooking the station's central docking bay. He had signed a lease under the station's interspecies shared housing program, designed to promote cooperation and understanding between different species. The brochure had promised an exciting cultural experience and friendly roommates from around the galaxy. Evan thought it would be an adventure. He didn't expect what actually arrived. The first day of moving in was normal. Boxes were stacked neatly, the air purifier hummed softly, and Evan felt a sense of peace. Then, at exactly 6 in the evening, a soft whooshing sound announced the arrival of his roommate. Zyrakel stood at the doorway. She was taller than any human, with long, smooth limbs and a gentle, glowing blue skin. Her eyes were large, reflective, and golden, giving her a serene, almost ethereal look. Her presence was calming but also slightly intimidating. She spoke in a soft, melodic voice. "Greetings, Evan Hale," she said, bowing slightly. "I am Zyrakel. I hope our cohabitation will be peaceful." Evan smiled nervously. Yeah, me too. Welcome." They spent the first few hours unpacking, exchanging polite conversation. Zyra seemed quiet, methodical, and deeply thoughtful. Evan admired her focus. Living with an alien had been a dream for him, a chance to learn firsthand about another species. The next day began like any other. Evan went to his maintenance job, and Zyra worked on her research, a field he didn't quite understand but assumed involved environmental biology. Everything was fine until night fell. It started subtly. Around 2 in the morning, Evan noticed a strange vibration through the walls. It was faint, almost musical, like a low hum but persistent. At first, he thought it was the station's machinery, but as the nights went on, the sound grew stronger. It had a rhythm to it, an irregular pulse that seemed to move through the floor, the walls, even through his body. Evan tried to ignore it. He put on earplugs, turned on white noise, even tried meditation. Nothing helped. Sleep became a memory, a distant thing that fled whenever he closed his eyes. One night, while lying awake, Evan heard Zyra moving around her room. He could hear her soft steps, then a faint shimmering sound, like water moving over glass. She wasn't making noise by accident. He realized she was emitting something, a signal, a pattern. Curious and slightly nervous, Evan knocked on her door. "Zyra, is everything okay?" Zyra opened the door slowly, her golden eyes reflecting concern. "Evan, I did not want to disturb you," she said softly, "but I believe the vibrations are affecting you." "What vibrations?" Evan asked, rubbing his eyes. "It's keeping me awake. It's like nothing I've ever experienced." Zyra's expression softened. "It is difficult to explain. My species has a natural cycle, a biological phase. Normally, it occurs at a later time of the year, but this cycle has started early." Evan blinked. "Cycle? Biological what?" She hesitated, as if unsure whether to continue. "It is what humans might call mating season. During this period, my body releases resonant signals. They are harmless to my species, but your species is more sensitive." Evan froze. "Wait, so you're causing this?" Zyra's glow dimmed slightly. "I did not intend to disturb you. I have been trying to isolate myself, but the signals still escape my chamber." Evan sank onto his bed. His mind spun. He had expected minor inconveniences, maybe cultural misunderstandings. He had not expected biological vibrations that prevented him from sleeping. For the next few nights, the apartment became a battlefield of endurance. Evan tried every human solution: thick blankets, earplugs, fans, white noise, even sleeping in the docking bay. Nothing worked. Zyra, meanwhile, moved with care, apologizing repeatedly, yet unable to stop her natural cycle. Despite the frustration, Evan began to notice something. The signals were not random, they had patterns. Rising and falling intensity, brief pauses, a rhythm that suggested intelligence behind it. He didn't understand it, but he could feel the structure. Humans were sensitive, yes, but they were also adaptable. Even without sleep, Evan's mind began to pick up the rhythm, almost unconsciously. One morning, after 3 nights with less than 3 hours of rest, Evan sat at his kitchen table, exhausted but alert in a strange way. Zyra brought him tea, human style, surprisingly, and placed it gently in front of him. "You seem different," she said, tilting her head. "Does the pattern affect you?" Evan nodded slowly. "I don't know, I can feel it now, like it's a language I almost understand." Zyra's eyes widened slightly, her bioluminescence flickering. "Fascinating. Your species. You endure far more than I anticipated. Most humans would not survive 3 nights without proper rest while exposed to this cycle." Evan managed a weak smile. "I guess we're stubborn." It was true. Humans were stubborn. That stubbornness had helped them survive centuries of disaster, war, and exploration. And now, lying awake night after night, Evan realized that stubbornness was keeping him alive, keeping him human. The next few days were a mixture of adaptation and experimentation. Evan tried to map the rhythm using scrap sensors and his tablet. Zyra, curious, began to help. She would move in precise motions, adjusting her resonant output slightly, while Evan noted changes in intensity. Slowly, he began to see patterns emerge, yet sleep remained elusive. Every morning, Evan stumbled through the station corridors, half awake but determined to continue. His coworkers noticed his fatigue and teased him gently, unaware of the true cause. "Bad night, Hale?" one engineer asked. Evan simply smiled, brushing his hair back. "Yeah, something like that." But deep down, Evan knew this was no ordinary challenge. This was a test of human resilience. If humans could survive alien biology, literally, without giving up, they could survive anything. Late one evening, Evan found himself sitting cross-legged in his living room, eyes closed, trying to synchronize with the rhythm of Zyra's signals. At first, it was unbearable. The vibrations seemed to pulse through his chest, making his heart beat in erratic patterns. But slowly, gradually, he began to listen rather than resist. He matched his breathing, his focus aligning with the pattern. It was exhausting, but it worked. For a few minutes he felt calm. Zyra peeked from her room. You are adapting." Evan opened his eyes, a small grin forming. "Maybe humans aren't as weak as they seem. Maybe we just learn differently." Zyra's glow brightened. "Perhaps we can help each other through this phase. I can adjust, you can adapt. Together, we might survive it without complete disruption." Evan nodded. "I think we can. And if nothing else, at least I'm learning a lot about alien biology, whether I wanted to or not." And so, life in the apartment settled into a strange, uneasy rhythm. Nights were long and restless, but Evan felt a spark of pride. Humans were the smallest minority on Aurora Prime, yet here he was, keeping up with an alien's natural cycle. It was exhausting, yes, but exhilarating. Little did he know, this was only the beginning. Zyra's early mating season would bring unexpected challenges, surprising alliances, and a test of human endurance he could never have imagined. But for now, Evan focused on one night at a time, listening, learning, and surviving. The apartment was quiet, except for the faint, rhythmic hum that now felt almost like a heartbeat. Evan smiled. Humans could endure. Humans could adapt. Humans could survive. And for the first time, he realized that maybe humans could even thrive. The next morning, Evan woke with a pounding headache. His eyes felt heavy, and every movement made him groan. He had barely slept, yet he forced himself to the small kitchen to make coffee. Zyra was already there, moving with her usual grace, carefully pouring a warm, pale blue liquid into a cup. "Good morning," she said softly. "I hope you slept at least a little." Evan sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. "A little, maybe 30 minutes. But I think I'm learning something about these vibrations of yours." Zyra tilted her head curiously. "Learning?" "Yes," Evan said, sitting down. "They are not random. They have a pattern, a rhythm, almost like a language. I can feel changes. I think they react to emotions, or at least to thought." Zyra's golden eyes widened slightly. "Interesting. Humans, you do not always notice subtle biological signals from other species. Most humans would have fled or collapsed." Evan smiled weakly. "Well, I'm stubborn. And apparently a little crazy." For the next few days, Evan dedicated himself to understanding Zyra's signals. He set up small sensors around their apartment, some borrowed from his maintenance work, others improvised with parts of old tools. He began recording the vibrations, noting the times when the pulses grew stronger or weaker. He discovered that Zyra's activity followed not just a simple rhythm, but a complex, repeating pattern. Zyra noticed his efforts. At first, she seemed uncomfortable, uncertain if she should interfere. But as Evan worked quietly, taking meticulous notes, she began to assist him. "Perhaps I can help you understand," she suggested one evening. She moved around her room with precision, adjusting her bioresonant output slightly. Evan observed the changes on his sensors, scribbling notes furiously. "You are very observant," Zyra said. "Most humans would find this unbearable. Yet you endure and even attempt to study it." Evan chuckled softly. "It's not pleasant, but it's fascinating. You're like a living instrument. I've never experienced anything like this." Zyra's glow brightened faintly, as if she were pleased. "Then perhaps we can learn from each other. I can adjust the signals slightly and you can attempt to synchronize. It may make it easier for both of us." Evan nodded eagerly. "I'd like that. I think if I can understand your rhythm, I can actually work with it instead of against it." For the first time since Zyra's cycle began, Evan slept for more than an hour without interruption. It was brief, fragmented, but it felt like a victory. The next few nights became an experiment in collaboration. Zyra would shift her signals slightly, testing how Evan reacted, while he tried to align his breathing and movements with the pulses. Slowly, his mind began to recognize the patterns. He could anticipate when the intensity would rise and when it would fall. During one particularly long night, Evan realized something surprising. The vibrations seemed to carry emotional weight. When Zyra focused on calm, logical thoughts, the pulses were steady and soft. When she experienced stress or excitement, the rhythm fluctuated unpredictably. Evan realized that he was not just adapting to biology, he was reading emotions through signals. The thought both amazed and unnerved him. Humans were not naturally sensitive to alien biology. Yet here he was, learning a new form of communication simply by enduring it. The discovery made him proud. If humans could survive the unknown, they could thrive anywhere. One morning, after nearly a week of sleepless nights, Evan finally had a breakthrough. He noticed a small, consistent change in Zyra's signal every evening, just before she began to move more frequently. He called it the prelude. By predicting the prelude, he could prepare himself to adapt. Zyra noticed his progress. "You anticipate the signals now," she said, her golden eyes shining. "You are learning faster than I expected." Evan smiled weakly. "I guess humans are stubborn, we find a way." Zyra's glow pulsed gently, almost like a nod. "It is remarkable. Your species' resilience is unlike any other I have encountered. Most beings would retreat, flee, or become ill, but humans, you endure, and you learn." Despite this progress, the apartment was far from peaceful. The signals still disrupted systems around them. Lights flickered, small appliances hummed oddly, and even the station's AI occasionally reported unusual readings near their apartment. Other species noticed, too. Some stared with curiosity, others whispered, wondering how humans could survive such conditions. Evan felt a mixture of pride and embarrassment. He was exhausted, yes, but he was also adapting. He had discovered that humans had a unique ability to endure environmental stress, biological or otherwise, without surrendering. That ability made them special, not the strongest, not the fastest, but adaptable. One afternoon, Evan's coworker, Lyra, a human engineer, visited. She looked concerned when she saw his dark circles and unkempt hair. "Evan, are you okay?" she asked. "I'm surviving," Evan said with a grin. "It's a long story." He hesitated, then decided to tell a version of the truth. "My roommate has a biological cycle that humans are very sensitive to. It's keeping me awake, but I'm studying it, trying to adapt." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "You're doing what? Most humans would have requested relocation by now." "I know," Evan said, "but I want to see if humans can cope. If we can endure it, maybe we can understand other species better, maybe even help them." Lyra laughed. "Only you would turn sleepless nights into a science experiment." That evening, Evan returned to the apartment determined to test his new theory. He set up his sensors, synchronized with Zyra, and began tracking her signals closely. Zyra, curious, joined him in her own way, adjusting her bioresonance to help him match the rhythm. For the first time, Evan felt almost comfortable, despite the vibration still humming through the walls. "You seem more focused," Zyra observed. "Even with minimal sleep, you remain alert. Most humans would be incapable." Evan nodded. "I guess. Humans aren't naturally strong in terms of tolerance, but we adapt. We survive. That's our strength." As the nights passed, Evan discovered other patterns in Zyra's behavior. The signals were not constant. They increased with movement, concentration, and emotional intensity. If Zyra became excited, anxious, or stressed, the vibrations fluctuated wildly. Yet if she remained calm and focused, the pulses were steady and gentle. By anticipating these fluctuations, Evan could adjust his own rhythm to stay balanced. It was tiring, yes. His body ached, his eyes burned, and he often felt dizzy. Yet the process fascinated him. Humans had survived centuries of natural disasters, wars, and alien contact. They were not the strongest species, but they were capable of endurance, learning, and innovation. Here, on Aurora Prime, he realized that human resilience was more than just mental toughness. It was biological adaptability, emotional flexibility, and creativity under pressure. Late one night, after several hours of practice, Evan sat quietly in the living room, his eyes closed. He synchronized his breathing with the rhythm of Zyra's signals, matching the pattern almost perfectly. The vibration still pulsed through his body, but now it felt less intrusive, almost natural. For a brief moment he felt at peace, connected not just to Zyra, but to the rhythm of life itself. Zyra watched him silently, her bioluminescent glow dimming and brightening gently. "You are remarkable," she said softly, "not just for enduring this cycle but for understanding it. Few beings of any species would attempt what you have done." Evan opened his eyes, smiling faintly. "It's not about strength. It's about learning, adapting. Humans survive because we figure things out. We find a way." Zyra's glow pulsed warmly. "Then perhaps this early cycle is not a burden but an opportunity for us to learn from each other." Evan leaned back in his chair, exhausted but satisfied. He knew the journey was far from over. Zyra's cycle was not finished. Nights would continue to be restless. Systems would continue to flicker. His body would continue to ache. But Evan had learned something vital. Humans could endure. Humans could adapt. And humans could thrive even in the face of alien challenges. The apartment was quiet. the faint hum of Zyra's signals filling the space. Evan closed his eyes, feeling the rhythm, and whispered to himself, "Humans can survive anything, even this." And for the first time in days, he felt almost ready for whatever came next. Evan's body had begun to protest. The first week of sleepless nights had left him weary but determined. Now, as the third week of Zyra's early cycle began, the fatigue was catching up. He moved through the station corridors with slow, measured steps, stifling yawns. His coworkers gave sympathetic smiles, unaware of the real challenge he faced. The vibrations in the apartment had grown stronger. Even the small sensors Evan had set up struggled to capture the complex patterns. Zyra's cycle was advancing faster than he had anticipated, and the rhythms now pulsed not only through the apartment, but also subtly through the walls and floor of the station. One evening, as Evan returned home from work, he found Zyra standing near the window, her glowing form bathed in the soft light of the docking bay. She seemed more restless than usual, her movements quicker, more deliberate. "Evan," she said, her voice tinged with concern, "the vibrations are increasing. They are stronger than before. Are you able to manage?" Evan leaned against the wall, trying to appear calm. "I'm managing, barely, but I think I'm getting better at predicting them." "It's like reading a language I didn't know existed." Zyra tilted her head. "Impressive. Few humans can endure this long. I am grateful for your patience." Evan smiled faintly. "I'm learning, Zyra. Humans survive by learning. We endure, adapt, and find solutions. That's our strength." But even as he said it, Evan felt the strain. His hands trembled slightly, his eyes burned, and a dull ache spread across his shoulders. The human body was resilient, but it had limits. For the first time, he wondered if he had pushed too far. The night deepened and the vibrations became more irregular. Evan noticed sudden spikes, moments when the rhythm pulsed sharply, making his heartbeat feel uneven. He stumbled slightly, gripping the edge of the table for support. Zyra noticed immediately. "Evan, you must rest," she urged gently. "Your body cannot withstand prolonged exposure without adequate recovery. I can adjust my signals, perhaps reduce intensity temporarily." Evan shook his head stubbornly. "No, I want to learn. I want to adapt. Humans endure challenges, Zyra. We don't give up easily." Zyra's glow dimmed slightly. She seemed torn between concern and admiration. "Very well," she said softly, "but be cautious. Your endurance is remarkable, yet fragile." Over the next few nights, Evan experimented with new techniques. He tried shifting his breathing in precise synchronization with Zyra's rhythms, adjusting his body position to align with the vibrations. Slowly, he learned to ride the pulses rather than resist them. It was exhausting work, but it allowed him to remain conscious and alert despite minimal sleep. One night, while testing a new method, Evan experienced something unexpected. As he focused on synchronizing with the pattern, he felt a sense of connection, not just to the vibrations but to Zyra herself. It was subtle, a feeling of understanding her mood through the shifts in intensity. When the pulses quickened, he knew she was stressed or anxious. When they steadied, he sensed calm. "Evan," Zyra asked, her voice soft and almost hesitant, "are you sensing my emotions?" Evan opened his eyes, a small smile forming despite exhaustion. "I think so. It's strange, but I think I understand you better this way. Your signals, they're like a language. I'm learning it." Zyra's glow pulsed warmly. "Fascinating. Your species, humans, have an adaptability I did not fully appreciate. You endure physical strain and still learn from it. Remarkable." But the station itself began to show signs of strain. Flickering lights, minor system errors, and occasional alerts became frequent near their apartment. Other species noticed too. A few aliens walked past the hallways, their expressions a mix of curiosity and disbelief. One particularly tall species with crystalline skin paused to whisper, "How can humans survive this?" Evan laughed weakly when Zyra mentioned it later. "We survive because we refuse to quit. Humans endure. That's what makes us, well, us. Yet the endurance was taking a toll. His muscles ached constantly, and his mind felt stretched thin. Simple tasks became challenges. He burned coffee, misread maintenance instructions, and nearly tripped over his own feet on multiple occasions. Zyra, concerned, suggested again that he take breaks or even request relocation, but Evan refused. "I can't," he said firmly. "Humans survive by facing challenges. If I leave now, I won't have learned anything. I want to endure this completely." Zyra's eyes softened. "Your determination is admirable, but there is a limit to endurance. I worry for your health." Despite the strain, Evan began to notice improvements in his adaptability. His body adjusted to the vibrations. His mind learned to anticipate spikes and pauses. By observing Zyra carefully, he even began predicting the moments when the rhythm would peak. One night, Evan set up a small test. He disconnected some of the sensors, relying entirely on his perception of the pulses. He wanted to see if he could endure and understand the rhythm without technological assistance. The first hour was brutal. Every vibration jolted his chest, making his muscles tense and his vision blur. His mind fought to stay focused. But gradually, he began to align with the pattern instinctively. He moved in subtle ways, shifting his weight, adjusting his breathing, and letting the vibrations guide him. By the third hour, Evan realized he was in complete sync. The pulses no longer felt intrusive, they became part of him. For the first time, he experienced a strange sense of peace amidst exhaustion. Zyra watched silently, her golden eyes glowing warmly. "You have adapted," she said softly. "Your species, humans, are truly remarkable. Most would have faltered long ago. Yet you endure, and now you comprehend the signals in ways few could." Evan smiled faintly. "Humans endure because we have to. We survive by learning, by adapting. That's how we thrive." Zyra nodded, her glow pulsing gently in agreement. "Perhaps there is a lesson for all species here. Not strength, not speed, but endurance, adaptation, and patience. Humanity has qualities that others underestimate." The next morning, Evan awoke feeling slightly stronger than before, though his eyes still bore the marks of sleepless nights. He realized that endurance wasn't just physical, it was mental, emotional, and even spiritual. By learning to live with Zyra's early cycle, he was discovering the true meaning of human adaptability. As days passed, Evan continued to refine his techniques. He experimented with body positions, breathing patterns, and even subtle focus exercises. Each night brought new challenges, new spikes in intensity, but he adapted, learning to ride the rhythm rather than fight it. Other humans on the station began to take notice. A few whispered admiringly in corridors about the human who survived Zyra's early cycle. Some aliens expressed disbelief, unable to understand how a human could endure such strain without retreating. Evan, exhausted but proud, realized that his species, resilience, was being noticed, not through aggression or power, but through sheer adaptability and patience. One evening, as he rested in the living room, Evan spoke aloud to Zyra. "I think I'm finally starting to understand it. The signals, the rhythm, even your emotions. It's like a language I never knew existed, and I think I can communicate back in my own way." Zyra tilted her head, curious. "Communicate? You mean respond with your own rhythm?" Evan nodded. "Yes, not just react, but participate. Humans, we don't always have the strongest bodies, but we find ways to endure and connect. That's our gift." Zyra's glow pulsed warmly. "Then perhaps this early cycle is not a curse but an opportunity for understanding, for growth. Your species, humanity, is more remarkable than I imagined." Evan smiled, closing his eyes. The vibrations filled the apartment once more, but now they felt less like a burden and more like a shared experience. He had endured, he had adapted, and he had begun to understand the language of Zyra's species. For the first time since her cycle began, the apartment felt alive in a new way. It was still challenging, still exhausting, but it was also a place of learning, growth, and connection. Humans, Evan realized, didn't just survive the unknown. They learned from it, adapted to it, and ultimately thrived. And as he drifted into a brief, much-needed sleep, Evan knew one thing clearly: the journey was far from over. Zyra's early cycle still had nights to come, and new challenges awaited. But if humans could endure this, they could endure anything. The apartment was filled with the faint, steady hum of Zyra's signals, and Evan smiled in his dreams. Humans could endure. Humans could adapt. Humans could thrive. Evan had never felt so alive and exhausted at the same time. After weeks of sleepless nights and constant vibrations, he was beginning to understand something remarkable. Humans didn't just endure, they adapted. Even when his muscles ached and his eyes burned, his mind grew sharper. He was noticing patterns in Zyra's signals that no machine could fully detect. That evening, as the dim lights of Aurora Prime flickered in the docking bay below, Evan sat at his small workbench, surrounded by gadgets and sensors. The apartment hummed with Zyra's rhythmic vibrations, now more complex than ever. Evan had devised a new experiment. He would synchronize fully with Zyra's signals, not just react to them. "You're trying to what exactly?" Zyra asked, her golden eyes glowing softly. She leaned against the doorway, her posture graceful but tense. Evan gestured at the sensors and makeshift harmonic dampeners. "I want to see if humans can actually match your signals, not just survive them but ride them. I think if I do it right, I can make it easier for both of us." Zyra's glow pulsed slightly brighter, showing her surprise. Fascinating. Few humans would attempt such synchronization. Most would fail quickly or collapse under strain. Evan smiled faintly, though his body screamed in protest. "I've got one advantage. Humans learn under pressure. If something is difficult, we keep trying until we figure it out." He turned on the equipment. Small lights blinked across the workbench as sensors tracked the vibrations in the room. Evan closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and allowed the pulses to wash over him. At first, it was overwhelming. The vibrations struck his chest like waves, making him stagger. His vision blurred, his fingers twitched involuntarily, and every muscle screamed. But Evan remembered what he had learned over the past few weeks. Do not resist. Observe. Align. Adapt. He shifted his weight, adjusted his breathing, and allowed his mind to follow the rhythm rather than fight it. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, he began to anticipate each pulse. The vibrations no longer felt like an enemy, they became a guide. Zyra watched him carefully, fascinated. "You are adjusting your internal rhythm. Your body is remarkable. Even without proper rest, you are beginning to synchronize." Hours passed. Evan's hands trembled, his legs ached, and sweat dripped from his forehead. Yet with every passing cycle, he felt more control. He could predict spikes, anticipate pauses, and even influence minor fluctuations by slightly shifting his position or focus. For the first time, Evan realized that human endurance was not just physical. It was mental, emotional, and adaptive. Humans could endure because they learned quickly, observed patterns, and applied creativity under pressure. Machines could measure signals, but only humans could interpret them intuitively. "Evan," Zyra said softly, breaking the silence, "I have observed your efforts closely. Your mind, it is remarkable. Even under extreme fatigue, you analyze patterns more efficiently than my instruments can." Evan smiled weakly. "Humans aren't the strongest species. We're not the fastest, but we endure. And when we endure, we learn. That's our advantage." Zyra's glow brightened as she moved closer. "Then perhaps there is more to this cycle than discomfort. It may be an opportunity." Evan opened his eyes. "An opportunity?" "Yes," Zyra said. "Your synchronization demonstrates that humans can interface with my biology in ways others cannot. You are adapting, improving, not just surviving but participating." It was a revelation. Humans, long underestimated by other species, had a unique capability, the ability to adapt under extreme stress. Even the alien species on Aurora Prime had limits that humans could surpass with enough persistence and learning. Determined, Evan pushed further. He adjusted his breathing, allowed his heartbeat to sync with the pulses, and even hummed softly, matching the frequency of Zyra's vibrations. Slowly, the room felt more stable. The lights flickered less. Small appliances that had previously malfunctioned now worked steadily. Even the station's AI registered the changes, reporting minor improvements in energy stability near the apartment. Zyra's eyes widened in surprise. Your synchronization, it stabilizes the environment as well, Evan nodded. Apparently. If humans can adjust to alien biology like this, maybe we can improve conditions, not just endure them. This was no longer just about surviving Zyra's early cycle. It was about expanding the human potential. Evan realized that humans had a unique trait. Under extreme challenges, they could find solutions that others would never imagine. Where other species relied on raw strength, speed, or inherent resilience, humans relied on creativity, observation, and adaptability. Over the next few nights, Evan refined his techniques. He learned to anticipate Zyra's peak signals before they arrived, to align his body to reduce fatigue, and to use his mind to communicate subtly with her through vibrations. He was no longer merely enduring. He was participating in her cycle, a feat no human had ever attempted. The apartment changed. No longer a place of constant struggle, it became a lab, a classroom, and a test of human endurance. Zyra moved with confidence, adjusting her signals to test Evan's limits. He responded instinctively, shifting, breathing, and focusing in perfect alignment. Each successful cycle reinforced his confidence. Humans were fragile by many standards, but when they needed to endure, they excelled. One night, as Evan rested briefly between cycles, Zyra spoke softly. I have observed many species throughout my life. Few possess such resilience and adaptability. Humans, your strength lies not in your bodies but in your minds and spirits. You endure, learn, and improve. That is remarkable. Evan chuckled, though exhaustion weighed heavily on him. We survive because we refuse to give up. That's how humans thrive, not by avoiding challenges but by facing them head-on. Zyra's glow pulsed warmly. Then perhaps your species is underestimated. Your endurance, your adaptability is a gift. Evan nodded, closing his eyes as he absorbed her words. The vibrations continued, but now they felt like a symphony, a rhythm he could ride, understand, and even influence. The challenge was still there, still exhausting, but for the first time he felt a deep sense of control. He had discovered something extraordinary. Humans were capable of turning endurance into advantage. While others fled, gave up, or relied solely on physical strength, humans learned, adapted, and thrived even under conditions that seemed impossible. For the first time, Evan felt a spark of hope. If humans could adapt to Zyra's alien biology, what else could they endure? What other challenges could they face and overcome? Zyra, sensing his thoughts, smiled faintly. It seems your species is not limited by what I once believed. You endure the unknown and you transform it into understanding. That is extraordinary. Evan opened his eyes, feeling a surge of pride and determination. It's not about being the strongest. It's about learning, adapting, and never giving up. That's how humans survive and thrive. The apartment was alive with vibrations, but now, for the first time, they were partners rather than enemies. Evan had learned to ride the rhythm, to predict, and to influence. He had discovered the remarkable potential of the human mind under stress, and he knew that this was only the beginning. And as he rested briefly, ready to face another cycle, Evan whispered to himself, humans don't just endure. Humans learn. Humans adapt. Humans survive. The room pulsed with Zyra's signals, and Evan, exhausted but triumphant, felt the truth of it. Humans were small in size, young among the stars, and underestimated by many. Yet when the universe tested them, they could fight back, endure, and thrive in ways no one expected. Days had passed since Evan first began fully synchronizing with Zyra's signals. Each night, he grew stronger, more aware, more attuned to her vibrations. What had begun as a battle for sleep had transformed into a shared rhythm, a kind of communication neither species had experienced before. The change did not go unnoticed. Other humans on Aurora Prime began to whisper about him in hallways, admiring the human who had survived what even some alien species could not tolerate. Zyra, too, watched with quiet admiration, impressed by his focus, endurance, and adaptability. One morning, the station's central communication panel beeped urgently. A council of mixed-species officials had been observing the apartment and wanted to speak with Evan. His first thought was panic. Surely they would tell him to leave or request that Zyra's cycle be isolated entirely. But when he entered the council chamber, he found the atmosphere surprisingly different. "Evan Hale," said a crystalline-skinned official, her voice sharp but not unkind. "We have monitored the vibrations in your apartment for several days. Initially, we considered relocating all human occupants to prevent system interference. But your adaptation has changed everything." Evan blinked, uncertain if he had heard correctly. "Changed everything." "Yes," another official added, a small, fur-covered alien with keen, bright eyes. "Your ability to endure and synchronize with Zyra's biological cycle has not only prevented disruptions, but has stabilized the environment around your apartment. Your species is extraordinary." Evan felt a flush of pride. Humans were often underestimated across the galaxy, seen as fragile, inexperienced, or unremarkable. Yet here, under alien scrutiny, his resilience was being recognized. "You've demonstrated something important," the crystalline official continued. "Humans are capable of adapting to extreme conditions that others cannot. This changes our perspective on interspecies cohabitation entirely. Rather than relocating you, we wish to study your methods and share them across the station." Evan tried to suppress a grin. "So, humans might be considered useful for something other than, general labor." The fur-covered alien chuckled softly. "Useful is an understatement. Humans endure, adapt, and innovate in ways many species cannot. You have turned a challenge into an opportunity." "This is remarkable." Back in his apartment, Evan returned to Zyra, both of them glowing faintly in the soft light of the docking bay. "Well," he said, running a hand through his hair, "it seems the station has finally realized humans are tougher than we look." Zyra's golden eyes shone. "Indeed, your endurance has not only preserved your health, but has drawn attention to the unique capabilities of your species. Most beings would have given up long ago. Humans, you continue to surprise." For the next few nights, Evan noticed subtle changes in the apartment. The vibrations were still present, but they no longer felt oppressive. Instead, they became a shared experience, almost like a conversation without words. He began to experiment further, testing new ways to align his body, breathing, and even subtle sounds with Zyra's signals. He discovered that by humming softly in tune with her vibrations, he could help stabilize minor fluctuations. Lights stopped flickering as much, small appliances worked consistently, and even some nearby station equipment registered fewer errors. Humans, he realized, had an ability to improve alien environments through adaptation, something no other species had managed. Zyra observed his progress with quiet fascination. "Your synchronization is improving. The pulses are now less disruptive to the station, and your responses, they are proactive, not reactive. This is unprecedented." Evan chuckled, exhausted but determined. "I'm just using what humans do best. We observe, we endure, and we find ways to solve problems. It's not about strength, it's about persistence." Word began to spread across Aurora Prime. Other species, curious about the human who had survived Zyra's early cycle, started observing from a distance. Some came quietly to learn, others whispered in corridors. A few even approached Evan with questions. "How do you do it?" asked a tall, slender alien one morning, pausing outside his apartment door. "How can a human survive a cycle that affects nearly every species differently?" Evan smiled, though his eyes were heavy with fatigue. "We don't give up. We adapt. We study, observe, and learn. If something challenges us, we figure out a way to endure it. That's what humans do." Zyra's glow pulsed in agreement. "It is true. Your species' strength is not physical. It is mental and emotional. You endure, learn, and grow." "That is extraordinary." The council decided to implement a new initiative. They created a small research division dedicated to studying human adaptability under extreme conditions. Scientists, engineers, and biologists of many species came to observe Evan, learning from his methods. Evan found himself explaining synchronization techniques, breathing adjustments, and subtle body movements that allowed him to endure Zyra's cycle. Despite his exhaustion, Evan felt a deep sense of pride. Humanity had long been underestimated, but now, in a small corner of Aurora Prime, humans were recognized for something truly unique. Not brute strength, not superior speed, but the ability to endure, adapt, and thrive. One evening, Zyra approached him, her golden eyes soft and thoughtful. "Evan, your endurance has changed the perception of your species. Humans are no longer seen as fragile or insignificant. Your actions, your adaptation, have inspired respect." Evan laughed softly, though fatigue weighed heavily on him. "I guess humans always surprise others, even when we don't mean to. We survive. We adapt. That's our way." Zyra nodded. "And now others will seek humans not for power, but for resilience. Your species has demonstrated something remarkable, the ability to thrive where others might fail." As the days continued, Evan continued his nightly synchronization with Zyra. The rhythms no longer felt burdensome. They became a form of understanding, a shared connection that transcended species. He had begun to anticipate fluctuations before they occurred, adjusting his body and mind to maintain balance. The apartment, once a site of sleepless struggle, had transformed into a laboratory of adaptation and learning. Evan's endurance had not only stabilized Zyra's cycle for himself, but had improved the surrounding environment, reduced interference, and drawn admiration from other species. It was during one particularly quiet night that Evan reflected on what he had learned. Humans were often underestimated, dismissed, and overlooked. Yet in the face of alien challenges, they had a unique advantage: the ability to endure, observe, learn, and adapt. Strength alone was not enough. Adaptation, persistence, and ingenuity were what allowed humanity to thrive in a universe filled with unknowns. Zyra approached, her glowing form casting soft light across the room. "Evan, your species is remarkable. Not because of strength, not because of speed, not because of technology, but because you endure. You adapt, you learn, and through that you thrive." Evan smiled faintly. "That's humans in a nutshell. We survive because we don't give up. We adapt because we have to. And when we face the unknown, we learn to make it our own." Zyra's glow pulsed warmly. "Then perhaps humans are not just a minor species in this galaxy. Perhaps your species has a role far greater than I imagined." Evan leaned back in his chair, exhaustion and pride mixing in equal measure. He knew the journey was far from over. Zyra's early cycle still had nights ahead, and challenges awaited him in every corner of Aurora Prime. But for the first time, he felt a true sense of human accomplishment. He had endured, adapted, and thrived. He had demonstrated that even the most underestimated species could rise to challenges others thought impossible. And he knew deep down that this was only the beginning of humanity's potential in the galaxy. The vibrations of Zyra's cycle continued, gentle and complex, filling the apartment with rhythm and energy. Evan closed his eyes, feeling the pulse, the rhythm, and the connection. He had survived the impossible and emerged stronger. Humanity had been recognized, not for dominance, not for technology, but for the power of endurance and adaptability. And as he drifted into the brief sleep his body finally allowed, Evan whispered to himself, "Humans endure. Humans adapt. Humans thrive. And nothing, not even the universe, can stop us." Weeks had passed since Evan first moved in with Zyra. What had begun as a battle to survive her early mating cycle had transformed into a story of endurance, adaptation, and unexpected recognition. Evan had learned the rhythm, matched it, and even influenced it. In doing so, he had not only survived but also earned admiration from Zyra, the station council, and other species who had been quietly observing. One evening, Evan returned from his maintenance shift, his body tired but his mind alert. The hum of Zyra's signals filled the apartment, softer now and less chaotic. He paused at the doorway, taking a deep breath. Each vibration no longer felt like a burden, they felt like a heartbeat, a pulse he could follow, a rhythm he could join. Zyra looked up from her research, glowing faintly. "Evan, you have endured much. I am impressed by your adaptation." Few humans or other species would have lasted this long. Evan smiled wearily. "It wasn't easy, that's for sure, but I've learned something important. Humans survive because we keep trying no matter how difficult things get. We find a way." Zyra's golden eyes brightened. "Indeed, your species has demonstrated a remarkable capacity. Not strength, not aggression, but endurance, intelligence, and perseverance. Traits often overlooked by others." Evan nodded. "Exactly, and I think other species are starting to notice that too." The station council had already begun publicizing Evan's success. Reports detailed how a human had not only survived an alien mating cycle that disrupted most systems, but had also stabilized the environment around the apartment. Scientists, engineers, and diplomats visited regularly to observe, learn, and even replicate his methods. Humans were no longer underestimated. They were respected for their adaptability, their problem-solving, and their persistence. One afternoon, a delegation of young alien students visited Evan's apartment. They were curious and a bit nervous. "How do you do it?" one asked, a small, soft-voiced alien with wings that shimmered in the station lights. Evan smiled. "It's about paying attention. Watching, learning, and adjusting. Humans aren't the strongest, but we're persistent. We endure because we have to, and along the way, we learn and improve." The students watched in awe as Evan demonstrated subtle movements and breathing techniques to match Zyra's signals. He explained how humans could adapt to rhythms and biological patterns far more complex than their own species. Zyra added her insights, describing the vibrations scientifically, while Evan showed the intuitive, human side of adaptation. "Your species is incredible," one student whispered to another. "To endure this and to understand it, humans are truly unique." Evan leaned back, exhausted but proud. Humans had long been underestimated on Aurora Prime and across the galaxy. But now, through his experience, the story was changing. Humans were not weak. Humans could survive, adapt, and thrive, even under conditions no one else could manage. That night, Evan and Zyra sat together quietly in the living room. The apartment was calm, the signals soft and steady. Evan closed his eyes and allowed himself to rest, even briefly. He reflected on everything that had happened: the sleepless nights, the vibrations, the experiments, and the slow synchronization that had transformed his struggle into a shared rhythm of understanding. "Evan," Zyra said softly, breaking the quiet, "your species, you are remarkable. Others may see humans as fragile or limited, but you endure, you adapt, you thrive. That is a gift." Evan smiled faintly, feeling the warmth of recognition. "We survive because we have to. And when we survive, we learn. And when we learn, we thrive. That's humanity in a nutshell." Zyra's glow pulsed gently, a silent acknowledgement of the truth in his words. Then perhaps, humans deserve more respect than I initially imagined. Your endurance has inspired not only me but the entire station. Your species is remarkable in ways others underestimate. Evan leaned back, letting the vibrations flow through him without resistance. The room felt alive, connected, and harmonious. He realized that what had begun as a challenge, a test of his patience, strength, and resilience, had become something far greater, a demonstration of human potential. The next morning, the station council made a formal announcement. Human adaptability, as demonstrated by Evan, would now be studied and shared. Other species began requesting human roommates, not for strength or aggression, but for resilience, patience, and problem-solving skills. Humans had shown that they could endure situations no other species could survive, and in doing so, turn challenges into opportunities. Evan watched the announcement on a screen, sipping his morning tea, still a bit tired but proud. Zyra moved beside him, glowing softly. Your species, you have changed perception across the station. Humanity is no longer underestimated. Evan smiled. I guess humans always surprise others when they keep trying. We don't always have the fastest reflexes or the strongest bodies, but we endure. And when we endure, we find a way. Over the next several days, Evan continued his nightly synchronization with Zyra. The rhythms were now almost second nature. He could anticipate fluctuations, adjust instinctively, and even communicate subtly through vibration. It was no longer a struggle. It was a partnership, a shared understanding that transcended species. Other humans visiting Aurora Prime began learning from Evan's methods. Some practiced synchronization with Zyra-like signals in controlled environments. Others studied his observations on endurance, adaptation, and learning under extreme conditions. Humanity's reputation on the station began to shift, from underestimated newcomer to a species capable of thriving even in the most challenging situations. One evening, as Evan and Zyra rested together, he reflected on the journey. The sleepless nights, the intense vibrations, and the constant struggle had been grueling. Yet they had revealed something extraordinary. Humans could turn adversity into advantage. Where other species might falter, humans could adapt. Where others saw limits, humans saw possibilities. You've proven something incredible, Evan, Zyra said softly. Humans do not merely endure, they grow, they learn, they adapt. That is your greatest strength. Evan nodded. We survive because we must, and when we survive, we change ourselves and the world around us. That's what makes humanity human. The signals pulsed gently, filling the apartment with rhythm and life. Evan allowed himself a deep, peaceful breath. He had endured the impossible, adapted to the unknown, and emerged stronger. Humanity had been noticed, not for aggression, not for technology, but for resilience, adaptability, and intelligence. And in that moment, Evan realized something profound. Humans were still young among the stars, underestimated and overlooked. Yet when the universe tested them, humans could endure, adapt, and thrive in ways no one expected. They did not rely solely on strength or speed. They relied on creativity, observation, and persistence. As he drifted into sleep, Evan felt a sense of accomplishment and quiet pride. Humanity had survived another challenge, grown from it, and gained respect in the galaxy. Zyra's early cycle, once a source of sleepless struggle, had become a symbol of human potential. The apartment was quiet, the vibrations soft and steady. Evan whispered to himself, a mantra born of experience. Humans endure, humans adapt, humans thrive, and we will continue to do so, no matter what the universe throws at us. Zyra, glowing softly beside him, gave a small nod. Indeed, Evan, humanity is remarkable, and now the galaxy will know it too. Evan smiled, eyes closing at last. The challenges had been immense, but the lesson was clear. Humans were underestimated because their strength was subtle. Their endurance, their creativity, and their ability to adapt quietly made them capable of facing what no other species could. The universe would continue to test them. Unknown cycles, strange environments, and unexpected challenges lay ahead, but humans had proven themselves resilient, resourceful, and enduring. They did not simply survive, they throve. And in the quiet of the apartment, with Zyra's gentle vibrations surrounding him, Evan felt a deep, unshakable truth. Humanity had not only survived the unknown, they had learned from it, adapted to it, and risen above it. Humans were awake. The galaxy had better pay attention.